Hi everyone, this is Glenn Flaherty from Boardgames and Bourbon, and right now I want to talk to you about the 5 expansions for Elder Sign, one of my favorite games, and I want to tell you which ones are in value order and what their attributes are to see if there's something that you might want to get if you're playing, because this is definitely a game that I enjoy. I think it's important to know how much they're going to play into your experience so you can kind of put that into your consideration when you're choosing, okay? I bring this up because they just had a new one come out called Omens of the Deep, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Okay, so first expansion in this game that I want you to know about, the number 5 expansion, is going to be Grave Consequences. Is the expansion that you're going to interact with the least, so I'm not sure it's going to be that important to you. You can certainly get away with not buying it, and I don't think the gameplay will be changed much, but it will add a little something, a little change of pace. In gaming, I enjoy the adventure. It's not really so much about winning, but I enjoy the adventure and going along. And life, some people don't like what they say randomness, but for me, life is totally, there are so many unexpected twists and turns that come up at all times. It can be in my game too. That's what these cards add. So there's 3 elements to the Grave Consequences expansion. The first one are phobias. Phobias look like this, okay? And phobia cards come into play when you lose your sanity. They basically hinder you. So I believe what happens is a doom track is added. Your sanity goes back to full. However, now you have something that'll hinder you. So it says here, you would draw this card, and it would say each time you fail an adventure, you lose an additional sanity. This one here says each time you move to an adventure with 1 or more investigators, you lose a sanity. So you are hindered. The second quality to the game is that you have these little headstones, which is when you physically die. And when you physically die, everyone is hurt. Or sometimes there's a benefit. This says here, if you die at midnight before drawing and resolving a new mythos, you're going, oh, that's the wrong card here. It says, if you die, a monster appears. If you die, each surviving investigator gains a glue token and a stamina, so it can be up and down. So in that way, it's almost better to lose your whole life, you know, at least you can throw a bone to everyone else. The third quality are the monster battles. The monster battles essentially change the order of play, and it puts a condition on each of you, and some of them play into certain bosses better. So it has a phaser each one. Let's see what this says here. Let me put these down. There's not many. Basically, you're going to fight in rounds, right? And with the elder boss. And here, for example, the investigators. When investigators gain a clue token, each investigator gains a clue token, then investigators attack as normal. That's good. Maybe some bosses need you to have clue tokens. Ancient One phase, each investigator loses 1 sanity, and then the Ancient One attacks as normal. And then round 2 begins with a different set of conditions. So that's pretty cool, but it doesn't really do too much. All right, number 4. Unseen Forces. And where's my Unseen Forces? Unseen Forces, I don't have the box anymore because now I have like one 15-pound box with everything shoved in there. Unseen Forces really doesn't do much. It adds more cards. They're still face up, but it does add Blessed and Cursed die. And the white die is the blessed die, and that just gives you an extra roll towards your goal. A cursed die will negate a die, and that's really all it does. But it does come into play more often. That's why it's a better expansion. Number 3 is going to be Omens of Ice. Omens of Ice is you are trying to go to Antarctica. You do this in 2 phases. You are going to prepare in phase 1. Let's see if I have a phase 1 deck, and you're going to try to get, these are what the cards look like. And what's going to happen is when you do phase 1, you're going to get supplies, little cargo crates. They help you survive in phase 2. Phase 2 is where you're actually getting your elder signs, deep, and you're trying to not fight the elder one. Okay, now phase 1 and phase 2 is cool. There's pressure to not stay in phase 1 and get cargo because there are these certain cards that are always on display and have midnight effects that are really crushing. It does have a cool little effect, which is a weather tracker. As the game goes on, the weather gets more severe, because you're going to Antarctica. And in this one, it says add 2 Doom tokens if you ever have 7 on there. Here, you don't even get to add Doom tokens. If you have so much bad weather, you just die. That's the winter side. So there's 2 levels of difficulty, and then you have 1 static Mythos deck. The cool thing about the Mythos deck in Omens of Ice is you get to choose to use the top effect or the bottom effect to see which one is less damaging to you in your current scenario. That's number 3. Number 2, I think this is absolutely mandatory, Streets of Arkham. Streets of Arkham takes you out of the mansion. Now you're exploring the city. Now it's more of an exploration because instead of being face up and knowing what you're looking at, now the cards are face down and there's that sense of exploration. You might also explore, boom, and then you run into portals that will whisk you away to an other world. And now you can't visit that location in the city until you resolve that other world. So you have to go there, resolve that, come back, close the gate. This is really cool. The Streets of Arkham made it much more of a exploratory journey. So that's really good. That's the number 2 expansion. And the number 1 expansion, which has really got me jazzed, is the brand new one, Omens of the Deep. Omens of the Deep is awesome. It's its own little universe you're living in. You're really lost on the sea. Now, what are some of the qualities about this one that set it apart? Okay, first of all, you're going to start on your ship, and essentially in this game, you're going on the water. You're trying to triangulate where Relay is, and then you go and fight Cthulhu, right? So you start out on this boat. This is the home card, which is basically where you go where you have nothing else to do to kind of recuperate. It has its own set of conditions. For stage 1, this game has 2 stages. So in stage 1, you are essentially trying to affect this cursor, this card, and you're trying to get your jewel, your marker, your cursor, all the way over to the ship, which lets you actually travel to where you're trying to get. But beware, it could also backslide, and if it goes here, monsters come out. Things get too gnarly. You're no longer on the ship. In phase 2, you're going to be on the wreckage. And now the benefits you can get correlate to what it's like being on the wreckage. If you actually get to travel, other implications happen. There's pressure because on stage 1 because monsters might come out, but also you need to find these amulets. If you find these amulets, they let you keep your die. If you do not find your amulets, you start to permanently lose your die. Pressure. So you don't know whether you should travel to stage 2 or if you should stay around and get your amulets, but if you do, monsters come out. But the monsters aren't just monsters. The monsters are monsters that reappear. So monsters will come out on the cards and then they keep reappearing. And when you resolve a monster, there's 2 phases to the monsters now. Okay, so like a red monster, it's not too hard to defeat. This one needs a scroll and a squiggly. But once you do that, you have to flip it over, and now there's a new condition to meet. This one says the monster will reappear unless you discard a spell. So now you have to meet the back condition, or he haunts you in the future. On the blue ones, they're a little bit harder in the front. This one locks a die, needs an investigation and a scroll. They ain't that bad. But on the back, it says you may fulfill this mission, which it says 5, which means 5 trophy points, to gain 6 clues. That's really cool. So now you have these monsters that are pushing and pulling you. You have stage 1 and 2 that has its own yin and the yang between monsters coming out and getting your amulets. You have your home base that is both you're on the ship that is healthy and really helpful. You have the wreckage, which requires 5 trophies, 4 trophies to just do something very basic. That's really punishing. The tracker moves over here and shows you what die you might get locked up for stage 2, but even more so than stage 1 and stage 2 having its own home base, its own cards. Now the Mythos cards are also synchronized. You have, stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is much more forgiving. Stage 2 is less forgiving. Ooh, does it really get hard, okay? And then again, kind of like Omens and Ice, you can choose on the back which one of the conditions you want to meet. Man, Omens of the Deep is an exploratory wonder world. It is very difficult. The bosses go from normal let's see, I think it says Hydra. Oh, these are from Omens of Ice, the bosses. But you have like Hydra, and then Dragoon, and then it moves up to Cthulhu for the bosses. So there's all types of difficulty and decisions. And the best part about Omens of the Deep is it leaves you with that feeling of saying, man, if I just made that one other decision, I might have won the game. Which is always a great place to be. Okay, so again, to recap those 5 in order of which I think they will affect your gameplay. Number 5, Grave Consequences, small deck. 4, Unseen Forces, Blessed and Cursed Eye. 3, Omens of Ice, you're going on exploration. I think that one is actually the hardest expansion. Number 2 is going to be Streets of Arkham, because now the cars are upside down and you have gates and you're traveling. And then number 5, Omens of the Deep, its whole universe. So anyway, look into those. I hope they help you. Let me know what your favorites are. I would just like to have a conversation, and that would be really cool. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much, guys. I'll talk to you soon.